guys in the dark.
This happened to me many years ago. I was doing my master's, and I was working in my dream school. Life was absolutely wonderful. I woke up ready to conquer the day. I was one of those kind of people. But this incident, it took it out of me, and I was low-key just ready to get out. Throughout my schooling, I was active on many dating sites. You could name it. Bumble, Hinge, Tinder, even OkCupid. From time to time, I would meet up with people. Have a great time doing it. This is just one of those stories. One night, it was during my third semester, I was hanging out with some of my friends, swiping left and right on Tinder. I happened to match with Tracy, who identified as she and her. We had matched about an hour later, started talking. She was really great to talk with, very easy, had a sarcastic sense of humor. We hit it off very easily. The only thing that was off was that she never spoke about anything personal. Like, every time that I would talk about jobs, families, even my pets, she wouldn't really answer to them, or it would be just general conversation. Like one time, she told me that she works sometimes as a debt collector. When I asked her how was that going, "Oh, I don't really know," she replied to me. I just wrote it off as her not wanting to share to someone who could possibly just be a hookup. Besides the joking around, most of our conversations were just sexual. I explained to her that I wasn't looking for anything serious, that I just wanted sex from time to time. She claimed that she was feeling the same and talked about how everything was so serious, and she was just wanting to have some fun. We kept talking all week. Every single day, she would ask me to just come over. This all started the night that we had matched up. About 2 hours of talking, she'd asked me to come over. I was extremely busy during that time. I told her that it wouldn't be possible. So she decided to invite me over every single night. She was very persistent about it. This would go on for 30, possibly even more minutes. Her asking me to come over. She even would give me ideas on how I can manage my work, and of course, listing all of the perks that I would get from her. I just couldn't find the time though. During a lot of our conversations, I had learned that she was on a trust fund that she survived on. Her parents were really rich. They bought her a house where she lived alone. At the end of our first week talking, I had asked her to hang out with me. She was beyond excited. It soon turned into some sort of argument though. I had invited her to a friend's party and then go to bars afterwards. She stayed put on the idea of me just coming over to her. We argued for about an hour or two. I was trying to keep it fun and silly, but I could definitely tell that she was getting really annoyed with me. At one point in time, she didn't text me back, and without thinking much about it, I had went ahead to the party without her. A couple hours rolled by. She texted me asking for my friend's address. I had sent it to her, and an hour later, she arrives. When we had met, she was so much fun. She wasn't irritated anymore. I was just glad by this. We had hung out with my friends. She was really funny. All of them happened to like having her there. As my friends decided to head to the bars, I had asked her to come back to my apartment with me. She agreed. We left the party. We both had talked, had a lot of fun. During all of our conversations, we had talked about kinks. She told me yes to everything, justifying that she wasn't lying about having an adventurer attitude. That night was no different. She didn't tell me no, or even hesitate on anything that we did. I told her that it was okay to stay over if she wanted. She denied me and left around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. But there was one thing that happened quite a lot that night. I wasn't thinking during this time. I didn't catch it beforehand. From the moment that we met, she kept on pestering me on how I should have come to her house. And every single chance that she got, she commented that her place would have been a much better idea for us. During the end, I do remember her saying something like, she wouldn't have to leave if it was her house, and I could have made her breakfast in the morning. She said it so much that I got annoyed by it. I promised her next time I would be at her place. We didn't talk a whole lot after that night. The conversation kind of just died because of her general answers. I didn't mind at all. We, however, talked enough to just keep in touch. Every other day, I would get asked to just come over. I had some time off during this, so I had agreed to meet up with her on a Wednesday. I asked her for the location. She had sent it to me. It was around 60 minutes away, outside of the city. I decided that I would ask her if we could just meet when she was in the city. Her mood had suddenly changed and cashed in the promise I made her last time we had met. I felt really bad. I told her yes. She got really happy all of a sudden. I made the drive at about 8 p.m., nearing to her house. I had realized how far I actually came from the city, that it was pretty tucked away. Now I see things really clearly. Back then, it was just a hint of doubt. Soon it had vanished as I saw Tracy at the door, dressed up in a lingerie set. She grabbed me, slung me inside, and we immediately got to it. After a few minutes, she had stopped, and then suddenly asked me to go to her bedroom and wait. It was the one on the first floor, she told me. She stayed on the main floor to go get something. That entire time I was alone. I kept on thinking that this couldn't be a trust fund sponsored house. It was huge. It was dirty, really not maintained. Most of this furniture was old and really ragged. There were a few newish kind of things here and there. Her bedroom was dimly lit. There was blackout curtains, and they were all drawn. I spread them apart just so I could let some light in. It was pretty much an empty room. Her bed frame was cheap, not really sturdy. Her clothing were kept in a cabinet. It was a glass cabinet that they usually use for displaying china. She happened to have a vinyl player, tons of records on the ground next to it. My gut suddenly was turning inside me, and all I did was walk around that room. I decided to exit the room and towards the stairs in the house. I was as quiet as I could be, because I didn't want her knowing that I was leaving. As I had gotten close to that staircase, I suddenly heard her talking. Then I heard another person. Then I heard another person. I had counted 3 people, possibly 4, talking back and forth in a light hushed tone. During that moment, my ears got really hot. My body had tensed up. I walked to a window, contemplating if I would break anything just jumping out of it. It really wasn't feasible. I pumped myself up. I'm 6 foot, about 240 pounds. I walked right down the stairs as lightly as I could. I got partway down. I was carefully listening. Their voices were coming from the opposite side of the house. I had gotten my car keys out pretty quickly. I rested my thumb on the unlock button. Once I got up the courage, that felt like forever. I had ran off the stairs and straight to the door. There were 3 locks on it, all the twisting ones. As I was unlocking every single one of them, I could hear Tracy calling me. I heard more than one person shuffling towards me. I had swung open that door and ran out to my car. I sat there, locked the door, as she said, "They're just my parents." She had gotten to my car, rested her hand on the side mirror. She was still in her lingerie. She called out my name. I faintly could see 2 people who didn't come out. They were just standing still at the doorway. A man and a woman. Without even thinking twice, I put the car in reverse. I flew right out of there. I drove back in a frenzy. There is one thing that definitely messes with me the most. It sends chills right down my spine every single time I think about it. I did understand a couple of words that were mustered. Someone happened to say, "Well, do it your way then." So a little on my background. I was about 21 at this time. Getting back and forth to school was a pretty decent distance. My parents had lived in a small town. The dating pool there was very slim. A couple of years ago, I was still adjusting to the adult dating scene. I started using Tinder. I thought that I had been on a few dates and had a few hookups, mostly just situations where I wasn't that interested in the guy, or it was just strictly a one-night stand. There is a college town that's about 50 minutes away from my parents' house. I went on a few dates there. It's a pretty cool city to hang out in. It was always worth the journey, even if the date didn't work out the way I wanted. My worst date that I had at this point was one guy that went in for the kiss when I clearly wasn't feeling it with him. Like I had cringed away, just as he was trying to kiss me, so his mouth had caught the edge of my mouth. It was extremely awkward, but by no means something where I felt my life was in danger. Sometimes things just really don't work out. However, this one is different. We had chatted through text message after matching on Tinder. He wasn't my usual type. He was really charming, though. A little bit of a stoner kind of guy. As a teenager, I got him through my own emo phase. He was pretty funny, confident. So, I decided to give him a chance. Usually I would make it a rule for myself to go chat on the phone at least once or twice before meeting up with any guy, even just to gauge if we would be able to carry on a conversation together. It's not the same when you're the only one texting. However, this was also to make sure that the pictures and the voice had matched up with the person that I was going to meet. We had hit it off over the phone well enough, so I felt that I should give hanging out a shot with him. We had talked about how I went to karaoke night at a local bar close to where I had attended my schooling. He said he and his friends liked going there to karaoke as well. He had lived in a college town, so I agreed to attending karaoke night with him and his friends. He said that they were hanging out at a local coffee shop near where he was, and I could meet them there if I wanted. A girl he knew had worked there as well. Said that she would give me a coffee around the house. Before leaving, I texted one of my friends exactly where I was going, just so that I would be safe. I had arrived. I could see into the coffee shop. I could see a group of 4 scraggly-looking dudes, one girl right behind the counter. As soon as I had pulled up, I got a bad feeling in my stomach. As soon as I had gotten out of my car, the guy that I had been chatting with left his group, and he came out. He said that they were leaving right now, so we should all just go. I had asked him what exactly the plan was. He said that they were going to head back to his place before heading to karaoke night. He didn't ask if I wanted anything from that shop. Didn't even ask if I wanted to come in with him. Around this time, his friends decided to come out. They all got really close to my car. I was getting bad vibes at this point. He isn't acting charming or even funny like he was on the phone. Everything felt really forced. There was something about this group, that they were only pretending to be friendly. Nobody had introduced themselves. They just kept on saying how awesome karaoke at the bar was going to be. The girl inside of the counter had gone into the back of the shop because she was friends with them. I didn't know if I could even trust her. I was thinking quickly. I said the plan sounded great. I could drive and meet them there, that I didn't want to leave my car there. That was suddenly a problem. The one car in the parking lot, which I thought was one of theirs, happens to be the girl. They said that they had walked there. It would be a lot better and faster if I just drove them right back to the house. I started to panic. Everyone's close to my car at this point. I tell them a lie. I tell them that there's a bunch of stuff from school in my car. It's really messy on top of all of that. Not everyone will be able to fit in it. They were right by my car, standing in front of it. They can see through my windshield. It had a backpack in it, and maybe a couple of pens and paper. That's it. I just lie and say that I'm kind of embarrassed, just because the floor happens to be messy. I'm telling them anything that I can just so I can get out of this. I tell them that I'm sorry, but if they ordered an Uber, I would just meet them at their place. I'm not budging on letting someone get in my car. The guy that I'm on the date with tells the other guys to just head back inside the shop. Now I'm alone with him outside. He asks me, why can't you just drive everyone there? He tells me that it's really not a big deal, that it's just easier if I drove everyone there. I stood firm that there's not room, and my car happens to be very messy. I had made a promise to meet him at his place. They had to order an Uber or walk there, to text me the address so that I could meet them. He says that it'll take too long to get back to his place. I should just meet them at the bar instead. He just wouldn't give me his address. He sends me the address to the bar. I apologize to him about the car. Tell him that I'm excited for the night. I'll meet him there. I smile. I act as naturally as possible. Then I get in my car. I try to drive normal while in view. Right as I'm out of sight, I decide to speed off. Just drive in a different direction. And then head back home. I was watching in my mirrors to see if anyone had followed me. Thankfully, no one did. Right after I was arriving home, I got a bunch of text messages from him. He told me that I was just another bitch. I was just pretending to be a nice girl. He told me that I deserved to have my intestines ripped out. He even said that I was going to burn in hell. My sins against mankind would come back to haunt me. Well, I guess I made the right call. Always trust your gut. If you get a bad feeling, you should listen to it. You don't have to be nice to anyone. Do what you can to take yourself out of any kind of situation. Let your friends know exactly where you're going so that they know who you are going to be with and when you plan on being back. I don't know. Maybe this guy was just harmless, but that's a risk that I will not take. I blocked him on Tinder and his number. I didn't hear from him again. I doubt that I'll ever encounter this guy again. I happened to be in New York at the time. I was looking across the table. It was clear that the conversation we were having had steered into uncharted waters. I was currently suffering through the worst dinner party I had ever had. I was holding a juicy chicken breast in my hand. That wasn't helping the situation at all. When my phone had lit up with a notification from my trusty wingman, I had jumped at the chance to excuse myself from that dinner and organize a date. This woman was in her early 30s. She wore a leather jacket like it was an Olympic event. She was full of tattoos, double sleeves, stretching right down to her inked-up knuckles. She was definitely right up my alley. Better yet, she was right up the street from me. We had matched on Tinder that very night. By some chance, she was downing whiskey in a bar that was right down the block from the dinner party that I was attending. Things work in mysterious ways like that, I guess. Sometimes the hand of fate. Maybe it's just that index finger. Just like that, I was sitting at the bar stool. I was awaiting the arrival of my next potential Tinder date. After a few minutes of waiting, just long enough to really start to savor that whiskey bar scent of the good liquor and bad decisions, a woman suddenly arrives. She was short, flaming red hair, looked nothing like the Tinder picture. She walked right past me, did a double take. She suddenly approaches me, her eyes wide with caution, like I might spoil the ending of her favorite film at just any moment. She said quietly, "Is your name Alex?" I looked at her, nodded. She seemed to relax quite a bit, going on to add, "Oh my God, you're here alone? Are you okay? My friend thought that you'd be here with your friends." I suddenly paused for a moment, wondering what part of my recently sent text along the lines of "looking forward to our date. My friends are heading home, and I want to stay out to see you." Just might have given her that exact opposite impression. "Really?" I'd asked. I was pretty clear that this was a one-on-one date. She didn't seem impressed with how I looked in real life. Done the classic last-minute switcheroo. "I'll go grab her and bring her over," this mystery redhead replied before I could get another word in, then melting away through the crowd like red cheese in the hot sun. In just moments, she had returned with her friend, who I recognized from her profile pictures, and another one of their friends, a rather large and jovial chap. Within the next 15 minutes, a few things became definitely clear to me. She didn't assume that I would bring friends. This was just a lie. She had social anxiety. Her friends happen to go everywhere that she goes to make sure that she does not curl up into a ball and have an anxiety attack, which apparently happens if she gets overwhelmed by things. The tattoos, jacket, the Tinder flirting, they were all covers for a woman who was so terrified of social interaction that she couldn't even speak to me. She was just frozen in social situations. I only wish that that was made up. She wouldn't make eye contact. She would not string together more than just a few words during a sentence. When I did try, and I take the verbal reins, she said something simple about how I really liked New York and the short time that I had spent there. She had told me, "No, I really don't like what you're saying. Just don't say that." So here we are. Not quite an odd couple. There was 4 of us on this date, sitting in a booth, in what could have been a really good conversation. And no, she hadn't found her inner voice. This woman was drop-dead gorgeous. She was like a pin-up model any day of the week, was staring into her drink like a psychic stares right into the tea leaves. The conversation had came from her flame-haired friend, equally flaming gay best friend, both of whom were actually great company. I found out that her friend hadn't spoken to her mother for years, that she went to acting school. She had wanted to go to South America while her gay best friend had worked in IT. But this town isn't as cool as everyone kept on saying it was. 3 of us chatted for quite a while about life, love, and even the universe. They apologized on her behalf for the date. It seemed that she really had wanted to come out, had hoped to have a little bit more control over the anxiety that very day. Upon seeing me, it just fell to pieces. To this day, I don't know if that's a compliment or not. After an hour of essentially being on a date with two strangers that I stood up to leave, there was to be no romance on this very night. I thanked her for giving it a shot. Suddenly, a spark of life came about. She had grabbed my arm. She asked me to stay. This felt like the start of a new direction for the night. I felt a surge of energy from her, an excitement to stay, and try to learn about this silent mystery woman. She grabbed up seats in the bar. In an effort to feel more comfortable, she quietly introduced me to that bartender. A very muscular man, possibly half bear. I'm not sure which half though. Had a very bushy beard. It was both tidy and wildly unkempt at the very same time. He and her had known each other for years. She seemed slightly more comfortable in his presence. For a woman with such nerves, that could only be a good thing. But after 30 or more minutes of almost dead silence, me being told my topics of conversation were still wrong, I had stood up to go to the bathroom. When I went to go sit down again, she had kissed the bearded bartender. Once she saw that I had seen her, she ran out the front door crying. The bartender had stormed off after her. Her friends had ran outside to make things better. I left a handful of dollar bills on the bar just to pay for my final drink. I had gotten into a taxi which was waiting. It pulled away right past her, who was curled up into a ball on the street. I wasted 4 hours of my night. I'd seen the powerful paralysis of social anxiety firsthand. I had only one thought in my mind. I really hoped that her friends worked things out with her mom. Even though this was probably the worst Tinder date that I have ever been on, I felt sympathy for her, as her condition must be pretty tough. I hope one day that she does find her inner voice, or at least someone that is willing to sit in comfortable silence with her. For me, the quest for my Tinder date went on.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.